Hello everyone. I can't start every stream complaining about Twitch, so I'm just not gonna do that. I'm just gonna stay out of it. Just know that I am complaining about Twitch. Secretly. In my head. Hello everyone. Kind of operating system? A barely working one. Yep. Actually, it's gotten more stable. I really need to give myself some... Um, I'm blanking on the word. Thumbs up. You know? That. Alright, this has nothing to do with it. What kind in terms of what this... Not respond... Okay, now it is. What kind of operating system in terms of what? All right. Right. Is it Unix? Like that's the question I was about to preemptively start answering actually. Somewhat. I've taken some inspiration from Unix and I've hated on Unix every chance I've gotten and on Linux as well. And a little bit on Mac, honestly. Not nearly as much. And a lot on AI, though that has nothing to do with it. But yeah, I've taken some inspiration from Unix, like the fact that everything is a file, but then, for example, not the directory structure for everything that is a file. I find that to be a little bit counterintuitive sometimes. And also, in general, I feel like lately I've been saying that we're not following any decisions made after the 1990s, or during the 1990s for that matter. But more so, it's just that, like, when you develop something for a really long time, you start developing a certain amount of tech debt. And it's not necessarily tech debt, but maybe it is just on a massive scale. The way that I see POSIX as having a lot of that, because it's carrying around stuff from probably the very first version of Unix in 1969 is when they started developing it. We're talking, doing the math real quick, what, 60 years? Yeah, we're coming up on 60 years since the first line of code of Unix was ever written. And even though stuff like Linux doesn't have any single line of code from Unix, and probably even Unix fixed a lot of their own tech in later versions, the overall design ideas that made sense back then don't necessarily make sense nowadays. So I very briefly considered making it POSIX compliant or POSIX-like, I guess, where like you follow it but you don't necessarily 100% follow the spec. Also, there's a whole certification process that's nothing to do with it. You can still be POSIX compliant. Well, yeah, you can be POSIX compliant without having a certification. You're just not POSIX certified, I guess. But no, I decided not to go with that because that would mean carrying around a lot of tech debt. And I've been getting a call like several times today. I'll think I have to answer. I'll be right back. I'm going to delete my phone line. I'm going to delete my phone number. I don't need a phone number anymore. I literally never call using the phone. I literally only get spam calls. And I haven't gotten some in a while, so I lowered my guard. And I have been getting calls, like 3 calls from the same number today. So I was like, okay, this is starting to seem important. It was not fucking important. I am genuinely just going to like delete my phone number. I'm so tired. Also my email. I don't need those anymore. Unix VFS is... a network from the ground up instead of trying to retrofit Unix's blocking BFS for asynchrony. Yeah, that's fair. I have to say that part is probably the one that is most Unix-like in my system, and I probably have the same issue. I did consider how to do an asynchronous VFS. It was a absolutely atrocious little prototype that I did, so I decided to scrap it, and I'll come back to it when I actually need to do it. Even though my file system can do a lot of things, right now it's very limited, and it's not networked, even though the operating system is eventually going to be distributed, so networked. So yeah, I built a little prototype. It was kind of shit, but the idea was good. The implementation was bad, so I'm sure I can do some more async file system soon enough. But yeah, that's the thing about if I want to change how my file system works, I can just do that. And sure, maybe an app that I compiled 2 weeks ago will break and I'll need to compile it again. But that's not the same as, pushing an update to, well, they don't have Unix anymore, but pushing an update to Linux that completely changes the structure of the file system. And then literally every single application that runs on Linux will need to adapt to this change. You can't introduce that kind of breaking changes. If you can, it takes like, what, a decade before you can deprecate it? Shit, my whole life I've been hearing about X11 being supposed to be deprecated, so I don't know about that. No, I'm talking about virtual file system. It's a lot easier in an experimental project to experiment, to change things, than it is in a production ready project, where, version 2 can't really break changes in version 1. It can, but it's risky. You can't just do it all carelessly. Hello, Dinas. And Chris. Okay, today I'm working on the terminal, though. Well, I guess on a shell. I have to say, yesterday I looked up the definition of shell so I could have a more, here it is still actually. So I could have a more formal knowledge of the difference between the shell and the terminal. Exactly what goes where, Is this behavior supposed to go in the terminal, supposed to be handled by the shell? Now, I don't necessarily do, I almost never do things based on how they're supposed to be done. If I end up doing them in the same way as it's done in other cases, most of the times I arrived at that conclusion myself. And it just so happens that the way that everyone else does it is the best way to do it. But I still like to know what others are doing. And I have to say, it was very confusing, kind of. I mean, I get it. It's like, I understand it, but if you had to ask me the definition of what's the difference between a shell and a terminal, if like this was a test question, I wouldn't be able to answer it. Oh. Alright. Device drivers. Honestly, I had a plan for that. First, everything was in the kernel. Then I started moving them outside of the kernel and just compiling them as libraries and just including them, so all these .a's. Ideally, you could do them even like as dynamic libraries, but I don't have dynamic library support. And I don't particularly feel the need to do that. Also, my system is ARM, so ARM devices tend to be a lot less customizable than x86 devices. So it's not like the computer is gonna shut down with NVIDIA GPU and wake up with an AMD GPU because it got replaced. That's very unlikely to happen on ARM. So, static libraries. I recall static library. I'm completely blanking on the name. Static libraries on an ARM operating system make a lot more sense. Whereas, if it was x86, I think I would have included. Well, no, because I'm doing everything on virtual machine. It's the same, but on real hardware, yeah, you can just pick and choose pieces. So you would need a lot more drivers to support, and also you would need a way to load the drivers dynamically, so you don't go crazy while writing drivers. But for now, yeah, it's literally just like there's header files in the kernel, and then the implementation in here, and it just gets linked. Sad to report that I'm watching on Windows 11. Sad to hear that. Yeah, that definition. Terminal is the program that emulates the physical terminal, and shell is the program that runs on top of the kernel. Yeah. That's the definition that I would have given you yesterday at this time when I started the stream before I did this research. And then I found out that technically,
followed your channel.
According to this, graphical shells are also considered to be, these types of applications are also technically considered to be shells. See how that blurs the line? Because, like, the file browser is an application. The terminal is an application, but the terminal is not a shell, but the file browser is a shell, but... And what? Technically, every instance of this would be a shell, because, like, this has its own directory, and if I open a new one, it has its own directory as well. I can navigate independently. So you can see how it can be a little bit more complex than that. Again, to the point that I understand it. But don't ask me. Don't ask me to explain it to you. Essentially. Also, the way that I built the shell, it's not as a full-on independent program. And I'm okay-ish with that. In an ideal world, it kind of replicates a lot of things with how a real program does things. Just it doesn't run in its own separate process. I would like to have the option to run it in its own separate process if that's needed. Especially for things like crashing. It won't crash your entire terminal. But I kind of like the idea of it being its own little sub-process, because then if you don't want it to be its own process, it doesn't have to be. So, yeah, kind of not sure how I'm going to do that. Like, I already did it where it's not a process. It's just functions that get called and a couple function pointers for, like, communicating between. But, I would need to have a kind of wrapper around it so that it can also run independently as its own program, if that's what I want. But I guess we'll see. It is on GitHub. Yes, you can run command git, you'll get it. Well, you'll get my all my repos, because there's a few projects in there. All mostly related. All my public projects are related to this. Modern OSs emulate that physical terminal through a GUI app, but that app can be called a shell since it runs on top of the kernel. Right, fair. For that matter, like, again, isn't every application running on top of the kernel in a way? Obviously, a shell provides you more direct access, right? Because it directly exposes functionality that the kernel also exposes through syscalls. But like any application uses those syscalls at some point or another and then builds on top of that. I guess the difference there is that the shell is very minimal on top of the kernel, whereas other things are just like much bigger, you know? My point is, if you think about it, a React Native app is a shell. No. No, 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 no. Not even gonna finish that sentence. But, I mean, yeah, the kernel is running on top of the hardware. Like, you have, where's Excalibur? Or you have your hardware here. We're reinventing Ring 0 and Ring 1 graphics and shit. Right, so then you have the kernel which wraps the hardware. And then on top of the kernel you have a very thin line. So we're going to make it very thin. Just a little bit around the kernel, like that. You can barely even see it. Oh no, hold on. It is above the kernel. And then, like other applications build on top of not a shell directly, but they use the same functions that the shell uses. Where's the line between a shell and a normal application? A question about syscalls. I did miss it, clearly. Hold up. I got you. Wait, I just saw Wayland was brand new when I first started messing with Linux as a teenager and people are still using X11. See, that's the thing. Since I've heard of... how long has Wayland been around? It's been around for a really long time. I have been hearing about Wayland is the new one and X11 is the old one and it's deprecated for a really long time. Wayland is 17 years old. And it's still like... God damn, Wayland's about to be a full-on adult. That's supposed to be the new thing. Oh, thanks. Are you exposing syscalls? Yes. Yes. I have a shared library here, which is also its own standalone project in my GitHub. And it has syscalls that it exposes. Sorry for exposing you as an unk. Though you're probably not much older than me. Like, yeah, since for as long as I've known about Linux, I wasn't super into Linux. I'm not into Linux. I don't like Linux, I have to be honest. But since I've known of Linux, I've known of Wayland, and I've been hearing how it's the new thing. It's the hot new thing in town, and it's been that. Again, not really my whole life, but it really has been. I mean, if you are a miner, it literally has been your whole life that Wayland has been around. And it still is the next thing. It's never gonna be its turn. I'm actually 29, so 20 late 20s. Oh. Said I'm 29 and immediately like started doing like the old man voice or something, I don't know. Alright, I drank that coffee way too fast and now it's hot as hell in here. Nobody's talking. There's no TTS, so I'm just gonna take these off. Sorry if you do TTS on Twitch. I'll be hearing it just very faintly because I can still hear it through these. Also, they're very broken. Well, they're not broken, just like the little cover around them is peeling off. Alright. It's officially May 3rd, which is summer, apparently. You live in Spain anyway. Okay, so what am I doing today? I'm gonna continue working on the shell. Again, it's not its own program. I think it would be beneficial if it was its own program, but my IPC right now is kind of limited. So I'm not in a hurry to make it a program. And again, I have to say, I have a selfish interest in keeping it able to not run as a program if you don't want it to. Which is that I can also use the same code to run a kind of scripting language for my game engine. I say selfish interest as if I wasn't writing the whole code. Like I can literally do whatever I want. I don't have to justify it to anyone, but yeah. Sennheisers will do you right. Thing about these headphones, they're pretty good for like music and stuff because they are they don't do any kind of like correction and whatnot that normal headphones do. That's very nice of them. But yeah, they're kind of old. And can I even like take these out if I want to? Yeah, this just feels like it rotates. Okay, maybe let's not break them. I'll figure it out some other time. But yeah, if they're replaceable, you can just get new cushions and then it's cool. I actually got a new cable for them. So it's gonna be another one of those Theseus's computer thing. Where I replace the cable, then I replace the cushion, then I replace the headphone itself. At which point did it become a new headphone, if at all? Audio-Technica M50s. These are also like really big. You can tell how big they are. And again, I'm not sure what they're supposed to be for, but they work really well for music stuff. Because of that. They don't change anything. Though it might be time to replace them. What brand is even this? I don't think I even like... Holy shit, even this part is peeling. Yeah, it might be time to start replacing you guys without a brand. Are these Amazon Basics? The fuck? Hi-Fi Man. It's like the world's shittiest superhero. He yells at you about audio quality when you're listening to Spotify music. Wait, I saw someone mention that tomorrow's Star Wars Day. Are the new Star Wars games good? I realized I was going to ask that yesterday because I was planning on maybe buying them. I kind of bought them anyway. So, I sure hope they're good. I can always return them, it's Steam. What the fuck is that? What the fuck is that? $1,800? That is crazy. Hey, maybe I'm not replacing them? Maybe I'm not replacing them. So I'm literally just now finding out how much they're worth. You know what? We're good. We're good. All of a sudden, I appreciate them a lot more. Can you tell they didn't buy them? What the this shit is that cannot be worth that much. It's literally falling apart. Okay, please tell me you can replace the things. Please tell me you can replace just these. Okay, this doesn't look exactly like mine. But like, I didn't see any cheap products on their website, so I'm a little bit scared anyway. Yeah, nothing here is cheap. These are, kind of. I mean, compared, they're cheap. Well, these are premium, to be fair. It's like a luxury brand of headphones. Oh, they do sell them. They do sell them, so they can probably be replaced. $10,000 sound. No. You know, I didn't even buy these. It was more of a, I don't use these, just take them type of situation. I say less. Alright, the earpads are like 40 to 20. I'm a little bit scared that about the dollar signs though. If you don't ship to Europe, okay, they do. Alright, we'll come back to this later. Well, no, we won't. That has nothing to do with the stream. I mean, I've had these headphones for like 3 or so years already. Developing an OS using Rust. Damn. How's that going? I can't imagine Rust is pleasant to work with for an OS. You can also just get rid of that last part of the sentence and it's still true. I just feel like at a very low level, Rust gets in your way, and people lie about that not being the case. I'm not gonna lie to you. That's my impression of it, though. I've only written like 5 lines of Rust, and I hated every single one of them. So, okay, here's the thing about the shell. I called it Sheldon, by the way. It was either that or Mary Shelley. Not gonna lie, I kind of want to use both. Maybe I should just make 2 shells. Maybe the executable version of the shell should be Mary Shelley, and the non-executable version should be Sheldon. What is the thing about it? I completely forgot. Right. I did some testing on using this shell to have some built-ins like these. I tested echo, pwd, and read, even though a pwd literally just gives you an error and does nothing else. Because I haven't implemented like directories in the shell yet. I hate my life, that's why I chose Rust. Okay, that's fair. No, but a serious question. Because I feel like since Rust requires you to, ask for permission for anything, essentially. I'm being dismissive, but kind of. Then isn't it a little bit difficult to be like working with raw memory, where you provide the allocator, you provide the memory protections, and the language expects you to play by existing rules that aren't actually there? That's the impression that I get for Rust. I said for 15k subscribers on YouTube, I was gonna do a RISC-V Hello World kernel. Um, I'm not gonna say for 20k I'm gonna do Rust, because fuck that. Uh, if I get 20k today, I'm gonna do Rust. Alright? There. Today, 24 hours. I'm actually giving you more than today. That's technically till tomorrow. Yeah, Rust feels like a user space should already exist. Yes, that's a fair way to put it. I think like Rust is a great idea. I don't like the syntax, but for example, I like Swift that follows a lot of the same design patterns. I just think it's just more straightforward and it has better syntax. Um, but the ideas itself, I'm not against. But yeah, they work for user space. Maybe you can even build user space in Rust, but you need to have some existing infrastructure to build upon, and you won't get that with Rust, I feel like. You're not going to replace C in the same way that you're not going to replace assembly. Like, that's not a thing. Assembly. These are two different words. They mean different things and they're pronounced differently. English, what the fuck? Just so you know, in Spanish, we have this thing called a tilde, an accent. You just put it on a letter and it indicates how it's supposed to be read. Pretty great. Give it a try. Read and read is another example of that. Two different words, slightly different meanings because it's just, yeah. You can inline assembly in Rust with unsafe. Yeah, sure, but if you have to mark everything as unsafe, then what's the point of using Rust? Again, all you're left with, if you get rid of the memory safety, is just horrible syntax. I don't know what to tell you. Yeah, you can't replace C in the same way that you can't replace assembly, not assembly. Because C is just an abstraction layer on top of the way that machine code works. It doesn't have any kind of hidden complexity. So any language that replaces it is either going to look almost exactly like C, or it is going to be not like C. It will have some hidden complexity. Like in Rust, I heard that Rust uses a lot of allocations even though you don't realize. How is that going to replace C, where you are aware of, if you go deep enough, because of course there can be libraries, you don't know what the library is doing, but if you write all the code, you kind of know what every bit of your code is doing. I can tell you with a pretty high degree of accuracy where I'm doing allocations in my code, where I'm doing any kind of thing in my code, because I wrote the whole thing. And I can do memory management manually, but in a very precise manner that most other higher level languages cannot do. Again, because C is just a simple abstraction layer on top of assembly code. Alright, what I want to do today is, yeah, yesterday I wrote these that are just wrappers around an existing call, an existing function. For example, read is just a wrapper around actually two functions, so I made it a little bit more complicated than it needs to be, around either this one or this one. But you could easily just put this part in its own function and then make this a wrapper around that. But yeah, my idea is to kind of wrap certain functions in this library with these macros and be able to just do command pwd, which is this thing here. command read, which calls this function. And really, the only complicated part about that is just the arguments, the order of the arguments, how to parse them, how to work with them, all of that. So I'm going to figure that out today, hopefully. And if I find too many roadblocks with that, I'll probably start implementing things like current directory and all that stuff for the shell. Where I'm treating the shell more like an environment than I'm treating it as a shell. So maybe I could have called it environment, but then again I couldn't have called it Sheldon or Mary Shelley, so it's not the same. You know, I really fucking hate this word. I know I was doing it because of the Sheldon joke, but it's so annoying, I'm just gonna get rid of it. I don't know what to put in there. It's supposed to be a welcome message to the shell. Alright, so echo works. What's the other one I implemented? PWD returns an error. And read. I actually have an entire program implemented of read, but now I replaced it with just a very simple function. C makes a number of assumptions that aren't entirely natural. Architecture rigidly designed around first-order stack discipline are shackled from the use of continuation passing style. Yeah, a couple of assumptions that it makes, it still has those. That's why I said any language that replaces C is going to end up looking a lot like C, but it isn't going to be exactly like C. At the very least, I expect it to have string slices, for example, built into the language. And that's probably the biggest one. C strings, something I think universally everyone complains about. And unfortunately, all languages have adapted to using C strings. Even though most of them have their own strings, they tend to have some conversion to C strings. Because at this point, we're just too deep. C with non-null terminated strings being native. Yep. To be fair, yeah, the reason they're made like that is because C doesn't even have any kind of like built-in types necessarily. It doesn't even have bool in the original version. See, even C99 doesn't have it. That's the thing that I made. But most types have a very specifically defined size. Strings don't. Like, it kind of makes... I don't know, I'm having a hard time explaining it, but it kind of makes sense. Alright, I want to find a new function to kind of make a built-in out of, because read is a little bit more complex than it needs to be. But really what I want to do is this. I want to come up with like an argument parser where I can define what the arguments look like. I mean, we're starting to get a little bit into like reflection territory here, reflection would make this particularly easy to do. Let's not pretend. So I could easily transform a command that's typed in terminal syntax into this if I had reflection. Well, I could. Traverse directory is a little bit difficult to implement because it has this function pointer here. Current directory requires extra work and it doesn't take any parameters. Home directory doesn't do anything. Right now, I'm pretty sure it's also not implemented. Alright, I'm just gonna deal with read. Alright, so the thing I want to do is I want to come up with a parser that allows me to parse the syntax of the read command, which right now is, if I'm not mistaken, it does take size. It should be able to take size explicitly. Okay, yes. That's 100 characters or 100 bytes of /console. It works even better than the other one, I'm not gonna lie, cause pretty sure the other one like crashed when I did this. I'm not sure if it still does, but probably not. But it did at some point. No, it works. Okay. Alright, so yes, I just want to make an argument parser for strings. Right, so a way that I can just specify what the arguments look like for this, and then be able to parse them. Right, so read follows this well, no, not this syntax, follows this syntax. Not sure that this is necessary. Like this, I believe. Hold on, let me see. Yep, this is kind of how they tend to type it. No, not really. Well, yeah, because file is optional in cat. You don't have to specify a file. Okay. But yeah, I think this is the syntax that usually we use to do usage when there is a non-optional argument, which essentially means path is always the first argument, non-optional or required, is the word. And then size is the second argument, optional. But other functions tend to be a little bit more permissive with like ordering, where instead they just allow you to specify a command like read console s100. Then you can have other options here, whatever they might be. And the order of them doesn't matter because they're using this little indicator. Right. So first I'm going to need some way of specifying what the arguments are and how to recognize them, and then I can build a parser for them. All right, so an argument is usually has a name. And again, it's either by position or by an indicator. And what do I call this? Hi, Kayal. Actually, hold on. What are these called? Not the actual letters, not the word argument. I just mean like the actual indicator for the arguments. Does that have a name? Because that's what I would need to put here. Um, they can be optional or not. And that's really all I can think of. So options. Well, these are options. I'm not sure that I'm. Essentially, I just want to come up with a name for this thing, which is how do we detect an argument? Like what the argument is supposed to be based on this. Not um, not it plus the argument, just the this syntax itself, I mean. Which is like that's how I want to detect it. You either detect it based on the position of the argument, like again in read, the first argument is always the path, and the second argument is always the size. But again, you could do it like that, or do it by specifying a letter that it uses to indicate this is the argument that we're. All right. So I'm probably gonna need also to define this, like the command itself. Yeah, that's the n number thing. Yes, it's just like what is that called? Is it just option? I guess it is just option. My question is how to name this thing essentially. But yeah, I think. Yeah, I'll call it option. Better than arg name, I guess. Um. All right. A command definition is not done by this. Yes, it kind of is done by this actually. Right now, I'm just storing function pointers directly. I should be storing a little bit more information. First off, we do have the function pointer. Which I'm pretty sure I actually type theft in the shell, maybe? What's your problem? Redefinition. That's not a redefinition, it's a forward declaration. It works, whatever, man. Built-in entry point. That's what I called it. All right, so a command is going to have an entry point. It is going to have a string slice a name, and it is going to have a list of arguments. And this part, I always struggle a little bit with the syntax. Can I just do this? How many arguments it has also. Let me test. So I have a command definition for read definition, which looks like, hold on, I need to put it after the read. Has 2 arguments, but we'll get to those. The entry point is this read function, and its name is read. Alright, so far so good. Can I then do arguments equal to cmd arg? No, probably not. Unless I'm doing the syntax wrong. It's always whenever I do this type of stuff, I'm always like, am I doing the syntax wrong? Or am I just not allowed to do this? So far, it looks like I am allowed to do it, like, based on the errors that I'm getting here. So, looks okay. Alright, but it's not auto-completing, so that's not a good sign. Then again, Clang breaks all the time, so I don't know. Name for the argument, optional, use value, and position. Name, optional, use value, use value is a little bit not super understandable. Essentially, it means when you encounter the option, are you also supposed to parse the next as the value of the option or not? Because some of them, like v, is usually used for verbose. And in that case, you don't parse anything after that. Some other ones do require it. Like O in GCC for output. The output is actually here. That's what it indicates. And frankly, this should go in here. Alright, so I want to build this thing. The name of this is slicelet path. The indicator does not use a position. Does not use the option. It is expected in 0, the first argument. So it doesn't use these two. And it is not an optional argument. Alright, so far no compilation errors. That's interesting. Alright, the second argument is optional. Its size does not use the optional. It is based on position as well. This looks to me like it worked. YouTube has a memory leak and Twitch app isn't behaving very stably either. That's nice. I started the stream saying I was not going to complain about Twitch like I always do. So, thanks for doing it for me. I was dying inside a little bit. There's actually an ad starting on Twitch, but I'm just gonna very quickly. Well, first off, I want to compile this and see if it works, because I'm kind of surprised that I got this syntax working on the first try is insane to me. Also, I'm not gonna lie, I really like this this way of doing things in C, of defining structures in C like that. Great, lovely. It's like JSON but better. All right, so I'm going to do the same thing I did for read with echo and PWD, even though PWD does not have does not actually do anything. Okay, so echo takes one argument only, so we're gonna delete the second one. The argument is okay, this gets actually a little bit more complex. I need to introduce a new value here, but the argument is, what do they call it actually? um, string. All right, echo a non-optional string, which is the first argument. Now on top of that, another thing here is ignore spaces. When ignore spaces is enabled, we are just going to take the rest of the argument string to be this argument here. In this case, it's string, so it makes sense. Right. And gonna do the same thing for the pd def. Thank you, everybody. Pd does not take any arguments, so this one's even easier. We just leave the arguments empty. Actually, the real PWD does take an argument in which it like resolves symlinks or not, but it's not like I'm doing that right now. All right. So instead of passing the function pointer directly to the array that holds the built-in command information, we're going to pass underscore underscore def to it. Yep. But like that. So we pass the address of this thing. See, that's what I mean with the, like memory management. I know exactly what's happening. The hash map does not. Never mind. The hash map does not do what I wanted it to do. The hash map is not copying this, or as I expected it to. So it needs to be a bit more complex than this. It does need to do allocations. Okay, first off I need to check something. The size of read def is 32. Alright, and the size of PWD is also 32. So it does not include the size of the arguments, right? It's 64 bits for this, so 8. A string slice is what? 16, I believe. Come on, man. Oh my god, I just need you to tell me the string slice size. That's it. A string slice is 16. And then the argc is 4. That adds up to 28. What's the other 4 bytes in here? Is it packed? Should there be packing? I don't think there should be packing. Hold on. A little bit confused. Alright, the size of this thing, the test struct, is reported as 32. Okay, so yeah, it is packing. What are you packing though? Oh, it's padding at the end, isn't it? It's packing. It's adding 4 extra bytes. Because this is 8 bytes. This is 16 bytes, which is 8 bytes twice. This is 4 bytes. So then it adds an extra 4 between this argument and this argument. But this argument is not counted as the size. Alright, so it adds an extra 4 bytes. Okay, the point of all that was that the size of this is reported as being 32. So it doesn't count this. We'll need to calculate that. Alright, so I'll just make a very quick static inline void register built-in. The point of using this is that I don't have to do the whole function thing.
Eta.
Char name and then the CMD definition. Alright, so you're gonna call this. And you're gonna call this. Before that, we're going to create a new CMD def where the size of this thing has to be kind of calculated. Because it's actually the size of a CMD def plus what comes after, which is these arguments. Since it's dynamic, we have to calculate it manually. That's the size of a CMD arg times the definitions argc. And it should be handling padding automatically, so we should be good. Alright, so that's the size. We're going to allocate a new CMD def to hold that. And then we're going to mem cpy into it. And we're going to pass that in. I forgot to put the function here. What is your problem? Call object type is not a function. Oh, that would be hash map put dictionary. Okay, include the memory. All right, that's all the boilerplate I needed, except now you're complaining. There we go. All right, so I can just register a built-in by just calling it by its name, which will automatically resolve it to calling this function with the name as a string and its definition, as long as it's the same name. So read and readdef need to be the same name. And what it does is it calculates the full size of this thing based on the number of arguments that is reported. You have to be careful to have it correct. Although I'm going to do it with a macro most likely, so it might be automatic. I'm not sure. Copies into a new allocated command definition and then puts that in the dictionary. All right, now when you call a built-in function, you no longer do this. You now do a command definition pointer. Do some null checks on it, such as checking that it has an entry point. And if it does, you call its entry point, which will parse the arguments based on this definition, really. So I need to modify the argument thing, built-in entry point. We'll have a shell handle context. It will have a CMD definition pointer. And it will have the arguments that it actually receives. So it's going to use this to parse this. Which means that the whole thing of command arg and command def, they need to actually be here. And I do realize that these two are declaring each other. So I need to forward declare this. How do you do forward declarations? Yeah, like that. And I did it for the wrong one, that's the problem. All right. This goes up here. All right. And you're going to be complaining about a different type. But am I doing the forward declaration wrong here? C struct forward declaration. I feel like I am doing it wrong because Clang is telling me that I'm doing it wrong, but it doesn't feel like I am. Type def. Oh, this is C++. Okay, I was so scared of this word showing up. Type def struct my struct. It feels like it, but Clang is complaining, but it does work. I mean, I haven't tested this code yet, but I'm doing the same thing here. Clang complains that it's a redefinition of a different, that it's a C11 feature. No, the fuck it isn't. I'm using it in C99. It's just fine. Have to get rid of the second type def. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense actually. Now I think about it for a second, it makes perfect sense. Alright, so let's do that. Sheldon, where are you at? Alright, so this is fine, and this one just becomes struct command def. That's it. Alright. So, I now need to upgrade all my functions to have a pointer to their definition. They really need, yes, they do need it. Alright, does that fix all errors? No, just still one. Right, because I'm not passing the definition. Alright, so nothing's going to change in terms of behavior. Hopefully. If everything is connected correctly, all I did was just replace a function pointer with a struct with a function pointer inside. Well, that crashed, so no. Hey, what crashed? What is that crash? Wait, that's interesting, because it's crashing before even doing any of this, so either the registration is crashing, or I broke something else. Okay, it's this that's crashing. Alright, so what are you doing? First on, the hash map gets created here, so we're good. Second, you create, based on this size, you z allocate, you mem copy. Is the full size calculated wrong, perhaps? That would be def argc. I'm gonna make this a pointer. That's gonna make this a lot easier in the first place. And I am calling this correctly, right? With a key and a value. Oh, it should be fine. Fixed. Okay. Cool. Okay, now all I need to do is make a parser for these things. Where really I just have to consider how to like I can easily make a parser that's just like, yeah, there's supposed to be this many arguments, maybe even you're missing this argument or you're using this argument wrong, whatever. But I don't have a parser that like needs to hold those values somewhere and actually like make them available to the program to use. So that part is a bit complicated. All right, first off, let me just make a argument parser that takes in a command definition and a slice string slice arguments and does the actual parsing. All right, so what do we do for each of the arguments? Well, we probably shouldn't be doing it per argument. We should be doing it per one of these. Do I have any like argument parsers already built? I feel like I do, but not super complex. Maybe one of the networking tools has something a bit complex to it. Yeah, here it is. This is probably the best way for me to do receiving arguments, just using a struct that itself holds those arguments and then populating it with this. But essentially, yeah, we're just going through each of the arguments that we find. And then if it contains a dash, then that's an option. Otherwise, that is just the actual argument. But here, I don't know the structure of the arguments that I'm parsing, and I also don't know the structure of the content that I'm parsing. So it's maybe a bit more complex than that. Anyway, I'm going to do this. Then the number of arguments comes from this. This gives me each of the arguments that my that this thing has. Now, if the... No, first I need to get the argument. We take it from string splitter get current splitter. We can check if the current argument, you know, I kind of feel like if the current argument data read as a character equals this thing, then that is an option. And we want to parse the rest of it as an option. So I can make a cmd arg return type which find option with a string slice option on a cmd def definition. It's just going to iterate over the definition argc and then go through its arguments This is not auto-completing properly. Pretty sure there's a lot to these arguments. Yeah, they have all these options. So if it doesn't use the option, we continue. Again, I don't understand what your problem is. cmd arg. Oh, indicator. If it doesn't use the option, then we're not finding an option. If it does use an option, then we have to see what that option is. And that's done with arguments I indicator option slice equal between this, the option that we've been given, with case sensitivity. Otherwise, we continue looking. We try to find the next option. Or we return 0. Right, so that's what we do if it contains an option. And you have to specify here the options using dash or dash dash, according to what you need. All right. Find option into the current argument and the definition. If we don't find it, so if no argument, then we can shell handle print, no, shell print and we return false, since this is probably supposed to be a boolean. If everything goes correctly, we return true. All right, so unknown option like that, and then we can even do a built-in print usage. Which I'll write in a second. Well, we need that, and we need the shell handle also to be able to print. Shell print handle usage. Wait, shell put. How is this normally formatted?
Susan King 16 followed your channel.
I was going to write a wrong command so that it would print the usage message. And then I remember that yesterday or the day before somebody pointed out that ls uses literally every letter in the alphabet on Mac and almost everyone on Linux. So probably cd does not. So I'm assuming it doesn't use O. Good. Invalid option, cd usage. Okay, so it prints like that. I'm going to do cd, well, no, command name. That would be the def name. Hello, Peter. How's it going? And then for each of its arguments, ideally advancing, we're also going to print how that argument is used. We can actually do it with if def argument I optional. Then we're going to print the argument with these. Like that even. No, handle stays like that. And this is the def arguments I name. It's more complex than that. If the argument uses an option, then we also want to print that option. I'm going to try this. Handle and just this at the end. No, that goes here, actually. Which should print something like this, but actually telling you what each of the options is if you filled in that information. And if you haven't, or if you don't have these, then it just tells you the name. And then, regardless of whatever, at the end, you always put a space. All right. So unknown, yeah. Then just do the handle and the definition to print that. And I believe we can test it. Although it might complain that count is not being used, so. No, echo is not the right one for this. Maybe PW. Am I actually calling this the argument parser anywhere? I'm not. So that's not helping. I'm just gonna call it here, but again, I don't know how to actually pass the parsed argument to the program. No, no print, just return false. I'm gonna take a bathroom break. I'll be back in a minute. All right. Okay, so argument parser hopefully will work now. It'll try to parse. I believe now it will actually work with echo if you do this. Unknown option L, usage echo string unknown command echo. All right, so the argument printer is not correct. First off, there should be a space here, and there should be a shell print, just empty print. Should actually add a new line at the end. Let's put a period there for... Okay. Unknown option L, usage echo string, period. That's not correct. There's an update for Firefox also. Unknown command echo. Yes, but technically it shouldn't work like this for echo. It should have a sort of fallback to see, because echo has a special kind of argument, which the entire argument string gets passed to it. So everything you put after echo just gets passed to echo if it isn't a recognized argument. So it's not really supposed to not crash, but it isn't really supposed to fail. Well, that's honestly kind of an edge case that if I start worrying about that too much before I even write the rest of the parser, it's not going to be amazing. So I'm just going to continue with this. All right, if we found the argument, we got to store it somewhere, and we don't know where. So that is a problem. And then... All right, so that's for arguments that have this. For arguments that don't have that, we're supposed to parse them based on their position. So if they use option, here we skip, and here we need the position. So what we need to check is that the argument indicator position is equal to the position that we were passed. And we return that argument, otherwise we return -1, because 0 is a valid position here. Oh no, wait, we return pointer. Never mind. Very good. Okay, so we parse which argument this is supposed to be based on the find position argument for the current argument at position count. So now count is actually being used. We don't need this anymore. Using the command definition that we were just given. Again, if no argument, we return this thing. I don't vibe code now. Okay. Now, about... Okay, you know what? The edge case that I considered? No, never mind. This doesn't solve it. If the argument indicator ignores spaces, then we're kind of done. This is the entire argument. But the value of the argument comes from, in this case, it's just the position itself. So the value of the argument is what we currently have. In this case, we need to check if the argument uses value. That means the next argument we need to take as the value no, that's not Right, so if we can't find the value afterwards, like again, something that uses /o and then a name of a file, we need to be able to find that name of a file. If we don't, we are just going to print an error that we don't have the current argument value. We're going to print the usage again. And we're going to return false. Otherwise, if we do find it, we get the current one. And no, not necessarily. If we're supposed to ignore spaces, then we do string splitter No, that's also not accurate. Remaining is going to give me everything after the first value of the argument. This is going to give me the first value of the argument. I need to combine these two in this case. So I'm going to put this edge case here. If we're supposed to ignore spaces, then we get the argument value from here. Otherwise, that's a different thing here. Otherwise, argument value is indeed taken from the current one. And for that matter, I can just simplify this even more by moving this checkout here. If argument value length is missing, then that means that we, didn't find an argument. All right. And again, if we're supposed to ignore spaces, then we've already parsed everything that there was to parse. Cool. But like I mentioned, I don't really have a whole lot of like I don't know how to actually parse the pass the arguments to this thing, right? I'm assuming it's going to be similar to what I did with file system routing thing, in which it just puts in another dictionary, and then you just get it from the dictionary. It kind of sucks, but I guess I can do that. Next YouTube video, I'm kind of starting to plan something, but I haven't really done that all that much. But yeah, soonish. I need to actually sit down and start thinking about it. I think I'm gonna have to use a dictionary for this. It sucks, but it is what it is. Alright, before I use a dictionary, might as well just check that the arguments are being parsed correctly. So that's current arg and argument value. Otherwise just the argument. And the argument name and the argument value, which is current arg. Alright, so that should parse the arguments but really not do anything besides that. Doesn't actually pass them to the program kind of reads them on its own. Let's say we got read it doesn't really matter actually what you do. Argument path console, okay, so that parsed correctly, and then console 100, well, 10 minus 0. Yep. Which, by the way, parsed that as null because it's not a valid value. And then if I do something like this, what happens? Unknown option R, read path size is optional. Alright. Cool. Now for actually parsing the arguments, again, this is where it gets a little bit complicated because we do need to store them somewhere in order to pass them to the program, and we don't really have anywhere to store them. So what do we do? I guess instead of returning a boolean, we are going to want to return another hash map. Where well, return false now becomes return 0, so that's okay. But we kind of need to destroy the hash map. Okay. So hash map put dictionary. Oh no. Oh god. Wait, okay. I was gonna say I need to have this be null terminated because I'm using a chart pointer, but that's not really the case. We can still use put without dictionary, which requires me to pass in a key length. And then I can pass a string, slice. Alright, so into arg values, we are gonna store our current argument data as the key with its explicit length. And the value is going to be the argument value. This does need to be allocated though. we don't even need to store it as a thing. Just do it like that. Dot data. And there we've stored an argument. Otherwise, if the argument doesn't have a value, then we are actually going to store just a null pointer value here, but the key existing is what matters. So store it somewhere. We are doing that. And this else is not really necessary. We have a return in here. All right, current argument, this thing. No, we use the argument name, data, and length as the key. And then we use the current argument as the value. And like that, we've stored the information into the command. And now, making more changes now, again, into the built-in entry point. Which, by the way, I realize... Wait, what is the Sheldon built-in? Is this actually being used anywhere? Not really. Okay, so it turns out that yesterday, apparently, no, wait, did I create this today? Yeah, yesterday I was trying to do this already, but I ended up doing it as CMD def. Anywho. This entry point needs to change again, because this time it's just going to take in a hash map t arguments already parsed for us. Taking data struct hash map. And now I'm pretty sure we no longer need this forward declaration. That's always nice to have. But of course, now if I did everything correctly, what is this one's? Oh, okay. This header file is having issues.
Shareholder_value 10 followed your channel.
I don't understand why you would need an LLM for coding. You just need to know what you're doing. Wait. Because I deleted the forward declaration, I need to bring back the type def. Like that. And, alright. Now to actually update the 3 functions that I've already built, because they no longer match. See, now you're supposed to call the argument called string. Hash map get dictionary. Should probably put a null check or 2 in there. Although, to be fair, if everything works correctly, the parser should already be giving this to us. Kind of null checked, but it wouldn't be wrong to do, but I can't be bothered. What can I say? Arguments. So you don't actually use the arguments, so. All right. All of this can now go. Yes, all of this can go. Kind of. Well, I need these values. I just don't need the parsing logic anymore. So now I do hash map get dictionary. From the arguments, you're going to get the size. which can be null. That's fine. And you're going to get the path. The path is... You're not going to do any of this, actually, so you don't need it to be a string anymore. It's okay to just make it a sharp pointer. Now, as for this, we kind of need to do a little bit of casting. I deleted half the function. I'm not about to complain. I guess it's time to test it. Okay, no, one more thing I need to do is after we're done returning, we need to hash map destroy the arguments, which we now actually take from here. What the hell is that entry? No. Like that. And I'm gonna add a to-do to eliminate entries as well. Wait. This is wrong. We need to parse this. All right. Yeah, all the arguments are actually chars, so you need to parse them like that. Let me see, read console. Holy, that worked. What? It actually works? I was actually genuinely surprised that I wrote all of that code. I one-shotted the damn thing like I'm an LLM. I one-shotted it, and it actually worked. Okay. So, now this argument parser actually automatically takes arguments from a argument definition, puts them into a hash map, and then the function is supposed to take them from the hash map. Ideally, even this function can be put inside of a macro. Granted, this part isn't gonna be great to put in a macro for this specific function, but for other functions, yes. So ideally, again, by the end that I'm done with all this, this is just boilerplate that gets put behind these macros. So I want to see how we can do that in 3 minutes, because there's an ad starting. So I'll be right back. Okay, 3 minutes have passed. The dog is awake. Did a little side eye. Okay. To my utmost surprise, not entirely sure of the usage of the word utmost there, but I don't care. I was able to do this on the first try. Define a command, and then parse arguments passed into that command and just send them over to the command in question. Here we are. We can just get them through a dictionary and then execute a function. That's cool. But the idea behind it, I'm not entirely sure how well I'm gonna be able to execute this idea, to be honest. There's more than just writing code to it. Like a wrapping a function. There's a little bit more than that. Hello, Arctic. I essentially want to be able to, with as little code as possible, wrap certain functions in my library with just making them into commands, right? So this shit or this. Now, read itself is a little bit more complex than this because it is supposed to read either the amount that you specify or the entire file. But that itself is not really functionality that my simple read function allows. But maybe it should be. Because right now what I'm doing is if you specify the size that you want to read, I call read simple read. If you don't specify the size, I call read full file. But in reality, if I pass 0 size to simple read, no, because that has a specified like buffer size, so you can't really do that. Simple read has a very limited amount of space that you give me to write into. So if you tell me the full file, I can't really do that. That would have been a major buffer overflow, but on the user space side. So it wouldn't have been particularly dangerous, but it would have been not great. So no, can't really do that. Yeah, so this one's a little bit more complex, but yeah, I essentially want to be able to say, hey, create a command that calls this function where each argument gets called like this.
You should make a voice channel for streams where people can talk on stream if you want and where you share screen. Just 4 fancy lol.
If people talk on stream, I will be so distracted. I'm not gonna get anything done. I'm not gonna lie to you. All right. Anyway, let me try something. I'm going to put it in its own function so I can in its own file, just so I can start maybe breaking apart the things that I do. No, I know not everyone allowed to talk on stream, but yeah, that's what I mean. I don't find that I find that to be very distracting for me, even if it's just one person. Just gonna put the wrapper Mary Shelley is now a rapper, by the way, with a W. Whatever, doesn't matter. These command require optional hard-coded things. They're gonna go here. Wait, can I resolve veridic arguments? This won't be easy to do. This probably won't work. Macros can only get you so far. And C doesn't really have any kind of reflection. So I can't really do this. I have to do it manually at some point or another. Is it possible to iterate over arguments in veridic macros? If it is possible, that's gonna be crazy. Here's my homework of the day. We're about to do some crazy macro tricks. What's going on with string guys? String guys 1, string guys 1, 2, 2, arg. Concatenate. Yeah, we're doing reflection in C. They're doing reflection in C. They reflect now. This is hard to read, I'm not gonna lie. But it's macros. They're not supposed to be readable. That's the entire point. Well, shit, you kind of want to make them readable, but... Alright, let me see what's going on here, because I genuinely have no idea. They call this, which prints trunc offset with narg, passing the veridic arguments, structure field and nargs. Alright. This, right? Prints trunc offsets and arg calls this one, where everything is a veridic argument, which then calls this one, which then calls this one, which then...
Sweaty PK73 followed your channel.
What the fuck is this? This is actual syntax? That is crazy. Is this just accessing each of the veridic arguments one by one? But then just n? So, not really? I don't understand this code. I've been out macroed. I have been out macroed. 100%, this is crazy. Okay, is there something simpler? No, it is genuinely like this. Okay, that's quite a lot. Alright, so Shelly wrapper, unfortunately you're gonna have to wait. Let's go back to the built-ins and try to make this as simple as possible. That's probably the best way to go about it. Alright, so I can do a macro. No, not really, because counting vertex arguments is not a super easy thing to do. Am I better off just leaving it as it is? These are built-in commands. I can literally parse them based off of this definition with a simple function that just uses them and just not do this directly. I do need to have a little bit of a glue function to it, but I feel like it's gonna get a little bit too crazy if I start messing with shit like this. Yeah, I think I'm asking for too much. Because the macro stuff, to just count the macros, you need to do stuff like this. 0, 1, which calls what, 2, which calls this, and then calls 1, so on and so forth. And then get macro probably counts the correct one and gets the correct macro for this. I don't know, I kind of want to build it, at the same time I'm kind of scared to build something like this. I feel like I'm going too far with the macros. But probably not, so who cares? Alright. Yeah, fucking. Let's give it a try. I got nothing better to do anyway. Alright, so the plan is to have an argument definition. Let's call it sharg. How do you define it? You define it by I can actually just do a few built-ins, like this is an argument, right? Which comes from include built-ins.h. This is just for reference. All right. So to declare an argument, you're going to need a name for it. You're going to need, if it is optional, then it's either position yeah, it'll need the position of it. The other type of argument uses an option and uses a value. And then another one for handling the ignore spaces ones, where the entire argument from there onwards is this one argument. Alright, so that covers the position, use option, ignore spaces, option, and use value. Okay. All this is going to call something like this, just with all the options filled in. With the name, use option, position, ignore spaces, option, use value, and optional. All right. That is going to return a CMD arg where the name taken from name, the indicator use option is taken from use option, option, option. The position is taken from the position. The ignore spaces is taken from the ignore spaces. And the optional is taken from the optional. And that's going to create our argument. Right. So now I got to fill these in. Name, pause is not a use option, so false. Pass the position as the third argument. Ignore spaces true. Option, that's missing, isn't it? Option is an empty slice. Ignore spaces, no wait, here. Use value, true. And optional, optional. All right. The same thing for this one, except this ignore spaces is false. Then this one's going to be different. The name, whether it's optional, the option goes here. Does not ignore, does not do position, does use option. So name, use option, yes, no position, does not ignore spaces, the option passed in, does it use a value, and optional. And for this one, it's going to be the same thing, except ignore. All right. So let me do everything in the same file for now, so I can work with it a little bit easier. Now, instead of doing all this, I can just do sh arg position all. Name is, well, name, I should actually be passing it in as a position, like that. No, what is it called? It was string. Optional, false, and the position 0, right? That's what was there before. Name turns it into a string if I'm not mistaken, so that's can be, wait, hold on. So this is creating a command argument which takes this string, this indicator. That's oh shit, okay. Kind of figured this would happen. These are supposed to be the actual word. No, that didn't work. Or did it? No. I need to I always forget how to do this in macros. Differentiate between the word name that's supposed to be literally written here versus the argument name that's supposed to be written here. There is a way to do that. I believe it's this, but I always forget. I recently did similar macros and I don't remember how I did it. And I don't remember where, so I don't remember how to fix it. Where did I do a macro recently that I did something similar? Hold on, let me just do an experiment here. This is what I want, yes. No, wait. No, it isn't. No, it isn't. This is what I want, but like... I'm not even sure how to define what I'm trying to... Well, no, I do. This is supposed to be the actual letter A. This is supposed to be the argument. There should be a way to differentiate between the two, but I don't remember which one it is. Although, just gonna kind of ignore that for now. I'm just gonna give these arguments underscores. Which means when you use them here, just use them with underscores. That should ignore the problem, though it doesn't fix it. It does not ignore the problem. Alright, so you create a name with this whole thing. An indicator use option, yeah. Position, yeah. Option, yes. Ignore spaces, yes. Optional 0. Field designator indicator does not refer to any field type string slice. Okay, so I got something wrong here. Indicator is a field of this thing. Wait, hold on. It's probably just forgot to delete that. Open parenthesis. This one closes here. This one closes here. This one closes here. As far as I can tell, this is the correct structure. Isn't it? Name does not refer to any instead of string slice. What do you mean instead of strings? There's a double bracket here that isn't supposed to be there. Oh, that's the problem. Alright. Back to this. Get rid of this. Get rid of this. Reduce the indentation by a bit. What now? This expands to a command argument with this. Pasting form that ignores spaces, an invalid preprocessing token. That looks fine to me. Ah, but wait, I'm still using this. Okay. Alright, so... just remembered, these are literally just preprocessor macros. They can just be put here
your channel.
and included here with no... Okay. Um, so now I can define one of these functions' arguments with just one line. That's gonna be very convenient, especially here. The first argument is a positional argument called path, non-optional, position 0. And the second one, at position 1, size, and an optional argument. All right. Now I need to generate a macro for this part. A macro for this part, if it wasn't for the argc, I could almost do it, but I can give it a try. Okay, shcmd name execute. I'm just gonna keep name for now. I'll keep execute out of it for now. Arguments. All right, and that is going to give us a CMD definition of this, pretty much. Where again, I'm going to use underscores here, so I can differentiate between this and this. The name of it is similar to what I'm doing here. Those macros are fun, mostly. And also, so I can just use this as kind of a tagging system to just be like, turn this function into a command. Kind of like this. This is the syntax that I'm going for. Alright, the function that you're going to call is going to be the one with the name. The number of arguments, I want to see if I can do something about that, but I'm not sure. The arguments are indeed just arguments. Alright. I'll probably expand this from sh to Shelly. Alright, so the read def now becomes... I haven't changed it to Shelly yet. CMD called read with arguments. These two. Wrap this whole thing in parentheses first off, so otherwise that's going to give us trouble. And how is it undefined? Did I not call it that? shcmd. Right here. What are you complaining about? Maybe the arguments are the problem? Let me just ignore them. No. I don't understand what the problem is. Hold on, let me do this instead. Make it a simpler macro for now. Okay, this works. This is perfectly fine. It expands to this. Alright. What about if I make this whole thing the macro? This obviously won't work, but this should. Okay. And then I add to that macro the entry point, which has the same name as the function. And I put a comma at the end. Entry point is repeated, isn't it? Yep. Then can I do the argc as n array arguments? Expected identify. Oh, okay, forgot that. No, suddenly it does not like that. Okay, what if I ignore that and I just do the arguments themselves? Just paste that in there. There's already a comma. Okay, so now this is repeated. So that's good, and now it breaks. Too many arguments. Need to put a wrap. Starting to break a little bit. Okay, I got it down to this. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to do more than that. So if I put one argument in here, it should be fine. The second I put another argument in, too many arguments provided. I think that's actually just a limitation in the macro system. Oh, what a shame. I'm thinking. I've done a lot of this macro hacking and I'm not about to stop now. So I'm thinking, have I done something similar in my game engine that I can just copy real quick? Probably. Not really. It did break a little bit there too. I think I'm just gonna cut my losses and consider that. This is how you define commands, I guess. What now? You should expand. Okay, let's get rid of that and that. Alright. I reduced it as much as I can, but don't think I can do much more than that. Macros don't handle arrays very well. What is that? Wait. Alright, I have an idea. It's real stupid, but if I do this with a semicolon, now I can do this. I can do arguments. Okay. Alright. See, I never give up on macros. You never give up on macros. Always bet on macros. And always bet on me abusing macros until I get what I want. We're not there yet, I guess. Oh, wait. Absolutely beautiful. No, you don't like that? Seriously? Seriously? Come on. Come on, man. No. So close. I'm not giving up on this macro thing. Absolutely fucking not. I've reduced it to this already, so. Alright, but you do want your arguments to be like that, don't you? But if I do it like that, you're gonna complain. Flexible array requires brace and closed initializer. That won't work, will it? That also won't work. Wait. No, this. What does this look like? Okay, so it does need me to define the macro like so. Is the syntax like completely breaking every time I do anything? Alright. That expands to this. What does this look like? All right, we have the name being done like that, yep. Entry point done like that, yep. argc is wrong. Okay. This looks fine. This is arguments. One argument, another argument. That's good. So what if I just pass argc to it? Like that, instead of calculating it? Will that be better? Two arguments. Lord. There we go. There we go. All right, and then I don't even necessarily need this to be a macro. No, that it does complain about. Oh, wait, no, hold on. Just gotta get rid of that. Type. Statement is not allowed at file scope. No, we're not a file scope anymore. Yeah. Okay. All right, so this is the best I can do right now for reducing what used to be here. I mean, that's not too bad. Yeah, I'm thinking that's not too bad. Reducing the arguments from reducing this to this is not a bad start. Now you can just define a function. You can create a shell command around the function by just calling this thing. Now there is another more complicated part, and that is performing the actual read. So there is one more thing that I want to put in here, where this is what gets called after. What the hell was that plan? Alright, I want this to expand to a function that looks like this. Which essentially means take all this. Okay. Alright. Since this is a bit of a complex function, where again I need to call either this one or this one based on whether I have certain arguments, I just put the function inside the macro as well. So it should create the read function. It should also create a read function command definition and the definition of all the arguments. It should parse all the arguments and take them in here, where I do whatever I want with them. Right, so I can do the same thing for pwd, cmd, pwd, no arguments, and what it does is just this. Ah, no arguments, empty argument initializer. And for echo, it just takes the string argument to it. So shcmd echo one argument. This is the argument. And this is the function. What is the problem now? Unterminated function like macro invocation. All right. So it's still not the most elegant. It's still not as elegant as I wanted it to be. But I can keep working on this later. Right now I can define any command by just 4-ish lines of code. Well, if it works, that is. But I think all I did was just rearrange the code. The actual functionality should still be the same. Never tested. What happens if I do this? That's it. That's the file. Okay, echo success. That failed. Alright. Let me test pwd before I continue. Shell has no directory. So that one works. This one is failing because it's failing to parse the string. The theme is Synthwave 84. Is Rust all hype or is there a use case for it? I was talking about it earlier. I would say a lot of hype. Like a lot. Like a little bit too much. But especially when it comes to low-level Rust, I think is not really good for low-level at all. For anything a little bit higher level, it might be okay. Even then, I feel like there's other languages that have the same memory safety features and much better syntax, and they don't get in your way nearly as much. So it does have some cases, of course. I think everything has some use case, but it is mostly overhyped. Alright, so Echo's not working, and I suspect it might be because of this. But I'm not sure. Because this same code used to work before, and again, all I did was just move it around. Print, specify new line, handle 0, this, hashmap get... Is it back? Alright, my string went down for a second. Looks like we're good now. Alright. Oh no, just OBS disconnected for some reason. Or maybe my internet disconnected for some reason, I can't tell. Alright. I want to work more on this syntax, to be honest. I want to be able to do this. I want to be able to do this. I want to be able to do this. Single line expose a function to the terminal. Tell me that wouldn't be cool to have. That is what we're building, essentially. But right now I'm not at a single line. I'm just using some crazy macros. Well, they're actually not even nearly as crazy as they could be. Yeah, not even top 10 craziest macros I have written. No, the crazy veridic argument hacking that they were doing in Stack Overflow that I saw earlier could maybe help me replace the arrays. But I would say right now we're fine. Alright, this, what is it that's crashing? This is crashing, it's a little bit weird. Let me put a print in here. Hash map has arguments. Hash map size args. I should also limit it to 8 arguments, maybe. Anything more complex than that, you want to write your own function for it. Alright, so echo hello. Okay, that crashes, but has one argument. Yeah. That's what's crashing. It's just a type of argument. It's not a string slice, it's a C string. Alright. GitHub is taking 10 years to load and it's just broken. GitHub might be down right now. On the one hand, GitHub is down a lot. To the point that I think that now they have something like 89% uptime or something like that. At the same time, it's just that useless. So, not really. Seems okay to me. It's about as slow and janky as it always has been. The thing is, you can take the statement GitHub might be down right now, say it at any point, and there's a more than 10% chance that you're right. There's like a... It's the thing. GitHub has like a down... has an uptime. Right? GitHub status. With a 99.78% uptime. Copilot has 100% uptime. It's been up since 16th of April, it seems. Yeah, all of this is reported as being like 99% uptime. Ooh, wow. Over the last 90 days. But if you go to this third-party one, you get an 84.68% uptime, which is lower than I expected it to be. This is the real uptime for GitHub. It's this, not the 99%. I think, yeah. Funnily enough, this page is still hosted on GitHub, so it probably goes down a lot too. Although it's github.io, but still. Oh. This is actually the video that I saw that made me find out about this page. This is literally the one. 91 incidents in the last 90 days. Including, by the way, do they have it here somewhere? It wasn't even an outage. It was just something completely insane to do with pull requests. This. Here. Wait, that didn't click. Alright. Wait, maybe this isn't it? But anyway, they did a bunch of merges wrong, I think is what happened. Incident with pull requests. This is probably it. Yep, this whole last thing. PRs merged via merge queue using the squash merge method produced incorrect merge commits when the merge group contained more than one PR. Meaning, congratulations GitHub, you can't even do fucking merging anymore. The Git website can't do Git anymore. But hey, get Copilot. I'm sure that'll work. Alright, there's an ad starting. I'll be back in 3 minutes. Okay, we're no longer taking a 3-minute break. All right, I'm a little bit disappointed in what I've done so far. My one line expose a function to the shell solution resulted in an average of 4 lines. Eh, it's not great. Although, to be fair, sometimes even more than that. It's nice to result in this. The shell print and shell put and all that stuff has me kind of considering that I should be doing something more with the well, to be fair, that I need to expand the shell a little bit more before I'm able to even get rid of these. Right, because what does echo do? Echo is really just a print. So this shouldn't really be shell put with this and then the argument. It should just be print L, just print literal, and then hash map get dictionary arguments string. Or you could easily just put this in a macro, which actually I need to do. So it should be still it should be println print L sh get arg string. Which, if I'm able to iterate through these arguments, I could actually just do it manually. It would be that easy. Although, well, yeah, maybe.
Romuald followed your channel.
Do you see text to jump around? Where's C-text again? That sounds very familiar. Generates an index tag of file of programmatic identifiers parsed from source code files of various programming languages to aid with code comprehension. Can you aid with comprehension of that definition? What the fuck does that mean? I feel like they tried to put as much information as possible in this sentence and it made it like straight up impossible to read. Microsoft does have money to feed GitHub, but their priorities are different. I've never used C-tags. And also from that definition, it's not like it really told me what it does, but yeah. I definitely considered integrating something like that in my code editor. List of symbols, right, yeah. I've never used it, so I wouldn't really know. All right, time to do even more stupid stuff. First off, I really want to simplify this code as much as possible. All right, so that there should also be a parse version, which what is up, my guy? Takes a char pointer version of the argument, calling it arg underscore argument. That would be a double one of these. Puts it in sh get arg argument. Then calls the actually probably better off making this in an actual like function. No. Okay, even better. Call that, and then no, okay, here I want it to be different. Argument str argument. Then on the new line, you're going to create a type also. A type argument equal to parser with str argument and an strlen call of that. Okay, so get the string, put it in here, get the path, and then we can even give it a default if the parsing fails. All right, that should handle all of this. Get arg parse, no, sh get arg parse, where the argument is the size, the type is an int, well, it's actually a size t, the default is 0, and the parser is parse int64. What are you talking about expected expression? All right, and that parses our um, arguments for us. Which means, again, if I'm able to iterate through this, I can also automate this part. If I automate this part, I can kind of call this part automatically. Now, another thing that is important here is the shell. Again, the fact that I have to call a what is it called? I have to call a special function in order to be able to print to the shell. Ideally, that will be done directly by print, and that way, first off, all the prints from the program get put into the shell, which is how it's supposed to be. And second, I'll be able to directly call functions without this shell put part here. But that is already a fair amount of crazy macro hacking going on. Where I'll need to make it worse. Yeah, this whole Shelly thing is gonna get worse than it is right now. I think a lot worse than it is right now. But that's the cool thing about macros. You kind of hide them. It's like that picture of Homer Simpson holding all his fat behind him. It's kind of like that. You don't actually see it. You just see a bunch of orange syntax highlighting. But then you have a relatively easy to read syntax, which again, in its best on its best behavior, it's going to look like this. Actually, even easier than this, because this would be the ideal way of doing it. This function should also be called pwd. So, well, actually, this would be the ideal way of doing it. No, new name, old name. Which again does nothing, but this is the ideal way to expose functions. Right now, this looks like this in the worst case scenario. And it would be a lot less. It would just look like this in the worst case scenario. What is that? 7 lines of code plus the 8th line of code to actually call the function. Plus this final line here. 9 lines of code in its worst case scenario. Great. Actually, you know what? If I do this, Already reduced it by a lot. I don't need this anymore. I was using this little print to differentiate between this read and the read that I manually implemented. Okay, so worst case scenario, we have 12 lines of code. It's not bad. Macros could reduce that a little bit, but also this part needs to be kind of reduced. Well, no, it would stay the same actually. This part would stay the same. So, yeah, not bad. Except that sReadF is not declared here. Frankly. Just keep it as it was. I don't really need this helper. Oops. Alright. Last thing I want to do is I want to at the very least move these over to their respective files so I can eventually start making more. Okay, so first off, I said I was going to change these sh underscore to Shelly. So I'm going to do that before I continue. Alright, and that means I need to make the same substitution here. Hope that it's... No, that was not okay. If I make it match case. Hashelli? Hash map a dictionary turned into a Hashelli map get dictionary. Well, let's do that again. Matching case this time. It won't happen again. Alright, we good? We good. Alright. So yeah, I essentially just want to move the built-in function thingy over to the actual each individual file here. So essentially just restructuring the code a little bit. Alright, so this argument parser first off. Maybe I just want to rename this file to built-in handler. And then I want to create a built-ins.h where I'm actually going to put currently this. Shelly wrapper. No, it's very red. Then also this. And also, that's it, right? Yeah, that's it. Call Shelton built-ins. Now, you need to include that, but also the built-in handler. And you have a lot of issues. Right, because this was including a bunch of stuff in here, such as... Wait, this comes with. So this, and yeah, all of these are now moving over here. The command definition comes from Sheldon.h. Oh wait, but Sheldon.h is important. No, no, it isn't. All right, are we good? Register built-in. No, hold on. Let me do it better. This register built-in function is going to come from here. But with extern. All right. Okay. So you essentially want this file to be just a place where you put the actual built-in functions. Because even though I can do a macro definition in the actual file where these functions are going to go, I kind of can't do have the shell like automatically pick them up. I have to have a single place where I register them. Don't think there is any kind of way around that. But all right. Let's make more changes. First off, just call this hence Shelly. And I'm actually just going to create a kind of header file for this, where we include Shelly and include Sheldon. That's all I think we need to include. So instead of... No, you don't need this anymore, actually. Scripting. All right. I can guarantee you you are using this. You are using the hell out of this, but don't complain. All right. All right, PWD doesn't do anything yet, but it will. So, if I'm not mistaken, that's here. No, it isn't. Where's get current directory defined? File helper. Oh, it's actually part of the file helper. Okay, so that goes here. Though again, it doesn't do anything, so it's fine. Nothing changes. And the last one for echo, I can keep here for now. All right, let me do one more. Let me see. What other commands are some of the most basic shell commands that I want to replicate? There's all the directory ones that I'm not going to do yet. There's cd, pwd, ls, mkdir, or mdir. Okay, so none of these can be implemented except for maybe ls. I'll see what I can do with ls. Maybe I can do that. Okay, so cat I've already implemented as read. I want to do an alias, but I don't have that yet. Less, kind of very similar thing. Head, tail, kind of very similar thing there. Grep, not really. Echo and chmod. All right, so in terms of basics, maybe I want to implement ls. I want to see if I'm able to do that. ls is an implementation of traverse directory, but traverse directory takes this dir traverse func, which is a function pointer that gets called when you encounter an entry into this thing. So before I declare anything, I need to create a print for it, which okay, this is where it gets complicated again because we don't have this shell put thing. I mean, I'm going to print. All right, I'm gonna move on from that for now. I just want to print the current directory slash the name. That's what this function does. And then I can actually implement the command as ls, and here is what it does. It just calls traverse directory. Now, it is going to take an argument, so I'm gonna need to figure that out. Give it a path. Pass that here. Recursive should be an argument itself, but for now we're gonna do false. Well, no, not really should be an argument because it doesn't have an argument. All right, I'm gonna do a shell handle. This is ugly as hell, but this is what happens when C doesn't have lambdas. You kind of have to do this. First I seen someone on Z. What's up, Jester? It's pretty fun. It's pretty fun. It's a code editor. It's pretty good though. I like it. All right, so traverse directory. This is not an argument. Now this is the ugly part that I don't like, is having to define the arguments like this. There's only one argument, path. One argument, ls args. All right. Still, relatively little code for implementing ls, because already I have the function implemented. I just have to do some basic and very repetitive argument parsing. Obviously, if you want to implement it like fully with every single edge case and everything taken care of, you kind of have to, implement it with like 5,000 lines of code. But instead, we're implementing it with, technically including all this, 15 lines of code, which really expand to a lot more because of the macros. All right. If I want to have ls, then all I need to do is reg built-in ls. You're still complaining about sreadf? The hell? Starting with the fact that now it's actually declared. Maybe no? I really don't understand. Okay, multiple definitions I can understand. Because none of these are marked as static. So I can actually just do like... that. This. And... that. Okay, that fixed it. Alright, so let's see. We have echo hello. Good. We have pwd. Unknown option hello? What do you mean? What do you mean? Am I not? What am I not clearing? There's clearly something I'm not clearing. Also, another thing is that when the argument parser fails, we return true because this tells us whether we handled the command or not. We did, it just didn't work. Still so confused as to why it took the argument from the previous command into this one. Alright, it does work. It prints 100 lines of that, and now ls. Unknown option console. Okay, so that's really weird. Wait, I do realize I have to do ls with a specific path, otherwise it won't work. Boom. They're not in order. They are, they have this, but that part is up to me. If I just want to get rid of it. Just don't print the directory, just print the name. chart. ls. Took me 5 minutes to implement it. That's the important part about it. Not so much the lines of code, although also that too. But ls took me 5 minutes to implement because all the boilerplate is just behind a few macros and behind a shell. That's always convenient. It would be cool to have fs level ordering. What do you mean? What else is missing? Not much else. Right, just the other thing is just the, I would love to have. I guess this is what I'm going to do for tomorrow's stream. I'm going to do, to work on the actual shell itself. ext4 doesn't sort files, it's on the ls side. Well, I kind of have the same issue right now. Although, funnily enough, home is a 9p directory, which means that Linux probably handles a lot of the functionality, which means ext4 is handling that issue. I do wonder what happens if I ls boot. Those look more in order. Although, that's FAT32, and the order depends on the, on when the entries were created. Which means that technically right now they're in order, but if you change the file a lot, like the entries and whatnot, you start rearranging them and whatnot, they will not be in order anymore. But right now they kind of are. Still, that shouldn't be up to ls to decide. It should be up to whatever function handles this. Anyway, yes, tomorrow's stream, I want to focus on making the shell a little bit more integrated into the whole system. So most likely, it's going to be something particularly complicated. We're just going to have a somewhat global pointer to the shell so that, or a way to get the current shell, so that any print goes through it, instead of having to explicitly call print shell print with a print handler, which makes things a lot more complicated, right? I need to have this variable, and I need to explicitly call this. So yeah, all prints should go through the shell if there is one. So we're gonna have that, and also I can maybe start working on like current directories and all that. That way the shell can navigate directories. So that's the plan for tomorrow. Hello, Rudy. You're reaching us at the end of the stream, unfortunately. But it is going to be on YouTube. All right. So yeah. The entire code for ls being this thing, I'm going to say, not half bad. 15 lines. Not a bad thing at all. And the I really like the idea of being able to just expose functions to a scripting language with this little code, which also works for exposing them as command line functions. And again, I also have I called it a selfish interest. That's not super accurate. I do have a extra interest in doing this because then I can reuse this to do scripting for my game without needing to run the scripting language as its own separate process, because it isn't a separate process. Lua direct access to fun, kind of, yeah. Because that is how scripting is done. You could ls, technically. That means that you could ls from the game. It's kind of crazy. But then again, I can further filter on the client side what goes to the shell. So, yeah. I hadn't thought about it. You can actually just like you're gonna be able to run ls from the game. Although I can limit the shell. That's the thing. I should be able to limit the shell. Maybe tomorrow we're gonna look a little bit into that, how to limit the shell, because like yeah, just the shell has its own environment. Kind of do that. And it's only allowed to run inside of the environment that you want it to run in. I'm using Firefox. All right, so maybe tomorrow I think about that a little bit more. But yeah, I'm also gonna have like a current shell pointer somewhere that you can just use to be able to print quickly to it. I'm also going to have a directory function type of thing. So we're gonna implement the cd. We're gonna see these nuts. And I'll think about how to further isolate access levels like that. Because also, like, yeah, it can be useful for scripting, but the environment that the shell runs in should be limited. Because, like, I want the scripting to be able to work with the same system, just to alter the game in the specific case that I want to build it on. For other things, you can use it for other things. But yeah, I want it to run within that environment, the environment of the game. Whereas in the terminal, it runs in the environment of the whole system. So yeah, we're gonna do environment for the shell. And it might even be a little bit of an exercise to how to do environment in the overall file system. Because I also want to do that. So yeah, some level of sandboxing, something like that. Sounds like a problem solved by containers. Sounds like we're making containers. So yes, but also we're making them. They're not really gonna solve the problem. They're gonna that is where we're going essentially. Yes, just sandboxed also because I want to sandbox my applications. But even then, the scripting problem remains because the game's mostly cross-platform. So I mostly run it on Linux, not on my system. So yeah, the problem would still remain because then I don't control the file system anymore. Should limit it somehow.
Williamsoft followed your
Okay.
channel.
No need to apologize for showing up late. You just come when you want. It's fine.
DMD Gas
Alright.
followed your channel.
Yeah, we're gonna do some essentially containers tomorrow with the shell. That's kind of what the shell is, really. I'm using a different definition of shell, where shell is supposed to be like a thin layer around the operating system. The one I'm doing is just an environment, a self-contained environment, which can also optionally provide a communication with the operating system. All right. So that's it for today. Say goodbye to Shelly and Sheldon. I ended up actually being able to use both names, so I'm happy for that, even though it's a little bit of a hack. Shelly is just a macro hell. Wait, you know what? I think Mary Shelley would be proud of the way that I am Frankensteining together a bunch of code to make uh, this shit. So I think perfect name. Look at that worked out. Well, that's great. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining. I'll see you tomorrow.